Welcome to the Pump Take Sports Show, part two of, I guess, three-part NHL season preview type thing where we outlook the whole season, the playoffs, a bunch of other things. Today, we're going to be going through the playoffs in the NHL. So each division is going to have a winner, and then that winner is going to play in a Final Four situation to go and win a Stanley Cup, hopefully. So, Pat, the North, Lucas is his name, Pat. North, the Canadian division. What do you think for these Canadian boys up here?
All right, so the North Division, as we mentioned in the previous video, our playoff teams are Toronto as the number one seed, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Calgary. So that puts Toronto and Calgary up against each other in the first round. Toronto's going to be happy that they're not seeing Boston this year. Hopefully for them, it's not going to be a similar situation as last year when they faced Columbus. But I've got Toronto coming out on top in that matchup. Calgary's got a little bit more grit to them, but Toronto has a significant higher level of talent and offensive prowess. So I've got them coming out on top there. And then in the other first round matchup, we've got Edmonton and Vancouver. And I've got Connor McDavid and the Oilers coming out on top. They've got a little bit more experience than the Vancouver Canucks. And obviously, you can't argue against the tandem of McDavid and Draisaitl. That puts Toronto and Edmonton up against each other in the divisional finals. And I've got Toronto coming out on top here. Leaf fans will be happy to know that I've got Toronto going on to the semifinals, I guess you would call it. I don't know what they're calling it this year because of the new divisional alignments. But I've got the Leafs coming out on top. They've got a deeper roster than Edmonton. Toronto's got a little bit more depth scoring and stronger goaltending as well.
Well, it's good to know that the Leafs are moving on. I think as a bunch of local boys, it's good to see the Leafs do well and, makes the hockey culture around here, I guess, a little bit better. The next division would be the East.
All right, so for the East Division, to reiterate, our playoff teams are Boston as the number one seed, Washington, Pittsburgh, and the Rangers in fourth. So that puts Boston and the Rangers up against each other in the first round. Boston comes out on top, I think, relatively easily here. Boston's just a much deeper team, way more experience, as we've seen with the Bruins in recent years. And Washington and Pittsburgh, that's a tough one to say. Washington recently won the Stanley Cup in 2018, and Pittsburgh won in 2016 and 17, so that'll be a fun matchup. It's always great to see Crosby and Ovechkin play against each other in a series. But I've got Crosby and the Penguins coming out on top to play the Bruins, and I've got Boston coming out on top there. I think Boston's just one of the top teams in the league for a reason. They've got stronger goaltending on the back end, and despite Boston's slightly hindered defensive core as opposed to last year, I think they've still got enough firepower up front and grit that they can get past the Pittsburgh Penguins to play the Toronto Maple Leafs in the next round.
And other than the East, we've got the West Division, which I believe, was it this one that you said was the best in our other video, or was it the East?
I said the East was the best.
Okay, the West is the one with your Kings,
yeah.
I believe.
Yes, that's the one with my Kings. So the West Division, the Kings are not in our playoff bracket here, unfortunately.
I thought the Kings were winning the Cup this year.
We'll see. It depends how good Quentin Byfield is.
Yeah.
Right. So our four playoff teams from the West Division are the Colorado Avalanche, the Vegas Golden Knights, St. Louis Blues, and the Arizona Coyotes. We've got Colorado up against the Arizona Coyotes in the first round. I think the Arizona Coyotes are one of the weaker teams that we've called a playoff team here. So Colorado easily comes out on top there. That could be a sweep. You heard it here first. And then Vegas and St. Louis, that'll be an interesting little matchup as well. But I've got Vegas coming out on top there to play the Colorado Avalanche. Colorado and Vegas, that's two of the top teams in the league. Would be a great playoff matchup to see. But I've got Colorado coming out on top. I think Colorado's due for a nice deep playoff run. So I've got them going on to the Final Four as well.
And so when I was looking at the notes that you sent me for this, for the video of the divisions and stuff like that, so there's four divisions and one of them is called Central. Is that just Central USA? Is that the idea of it?
Yeah. So they kind of just put together all the teams that didn't fit in the other ones.
Yeah,
they've got the two Florida teams in the Central Division, which doesn't make any sense.
So Central's really just the outliers that didn't really fit in.
Yeah,
it's
like some of them are Central, but
I think it's meant to, or for like they group the teams that are like geographically in the same region, just so like COVID and like traveling purposes.
Yeah, but they don't always have that perfectly down to a science, because you've got the Florida teams who are clearly not in any sort of central region of the U.S., who are usually in the Leafs division too, which also doesn't make any geographical sense. But the Florida teams are kind of homeless a little bit down there. They're hanging out by themselves. Anyway,
well,
so
the Central Division. No matter what, it's a weird name for it, but the Central Division, Pat, who's winning it?
So our four teams from the Central making the playoffs are the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Dallas Stars, the Nashville Predators, and the Carolina Hurricanes. So that puts the Tampa Bay Lightning up against the Carolina Hurricanes in the first round. You got to like Tampa in that round. Carolina is good for we're good for a nice deep playoff run a couple years ago. But you know, when they get unlucky and face a team like Tampa in the first round, there's not much you can do. And Dallas and Nashville, I've got Dallas coming out on top to make a nice little rematch of the Stanley Cup final last year in the second round of the playoffs. So weird how that works. We've got Tampa Bay and Dallas facing each other in the second round. And much like our Stanley Cup final last year, we've got Tampa coming out on top there as well. So Tampa's our last divisional winner. So to reiterate, our 4 divisional winners going on to the semifinals of the Stanley Cup playoffs are the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Boston Bruins, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Colorado Avalanche.
One thing to add before we go to the final 4 in the I guess the semifinals is that I've always really liked the Dallas Stars colors, like the really dark green and the white. Maybe it's the Packers fan in me that's into the dark green color scheme for teams. And I despise the Cowboys. So this has nothing to do with any sort of Dallas like affiliation, but I really like that dark green on the Dallas Stars. There's my hockey insight for the show.
Yeah, they call it Victory Green.
Oh, Victory Green. I like
that. That's what the Mavericks like third logo thing is too.
Yeah, their new alternate jerseys. Yeah, it's like a green thing going on. Yeah. Okay, Pat, the final 4. What are we looking at here?
The Toronto Maple Leafs could never move on to a Stanley Cup final without beating their Goliath to their David. And that is the Boston Bruins. So I've got the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Boston Bruins playing in the Final Four, first round of the Final Four. Just a little note to make is when those 4 divisional winners come out in the playoffs, they reseed them based on their regular season records, which is something that we didn't predict in this video. But I'm predicting Tampa Bay is going to win the President's Trophy and Colorado would be the 4th. So anyway, so Toronto and Boston, I think, and this will really get the Leafs fans juiced, I think this is finally the year that the Leafs can get a little bit of momentum underneath them. After beating Calgary and Edmonton in the first 2 rounds, the Leafs will finally be on a roll and be able to potentially topple their Goliath in the Boston Bruins and move on to the Stanley Cup Finals. You heard it here first. The Toronto Maple Leafs are making the Stanley Cup Finals.
I don't want to rain on the Leafs fans' parade, but what makes you think that this is the year that the Leafs are going to do it? Because it seems like every year that these two teams face off in the playoffs, like it's obviously like a historic rivalry that we've seen over the past couple of years. It seems like Boston always has their number. Like they're always just the more physical team, and then just over a long 7-game series, I've noticed they come out on top because of that. So why do you think that the Leafs are gonna beat them this year?
Well, to be honest, as I've mentioned in the past, and I mentioned this as not being a big issue in their previous matchups in the playoffs, but the fact that the Boston Bruins did lose guys like Zdeno Chara, who used to always be able to get under the Leafs' skin and physically dominate them and any other team they played, and also Torrey Krug, who's also a little bit of he's a small guy, but he has a lot of grit to him as well, and he's a really good skater on the back end. The Boston Bruins don't have as formidable of a defensive core as they have in the past. And that is going to match up really poorly for them against the strong offense of the Toronto Maple Leafs. They'll have a lot more trouble stopping guys like Matthews, Tavares, Marner, and Nylander when you don't have as deep of a defensive core, which is the reason that the Boston Bruins were always able to beat the Leafs. The Boston Bruins didn't always beat the Leafs because of their offensive prowess, but it was more because they could get under their skin, grind them down, and stop them from being able to do what they do best, which is score. On the other side, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, Pat. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say, who do you have facing the Leafs or probably beating the Leafs? The Leafs aren't going to win the Stanley Cup, and I don't even know anything about puck. But yeah, who do you think's going to beat the Leafs in the Stanley Cup Finals?
Well, in the other side of the Final Four bracket, we've got Colorado and Tampa Bay. Interesting to note that I've got Toronto, Boston, and Tampa all in the Final Four, who are all usually in the same division, in the Atlantic Division. So that's really interesting to see that as well. But Tampa Bay versus Colorado, I think this is where Tampa Bay's Cinderella Stanley Cup defense comes to an end. The Colorado Avalanche are due, as I mentioned before, they are due for a deep cup run. And I think that the Tampa Bay Lightning have actually slightly decreased their abilities to contend over the offseason, and the Colorado Avalanche have actually increased that, as we mentioned with the Brandon Saad and the Devin Taves additions. So and also the fact that Tampa Bay doesn't really know when they're going to get Nikita Kucherov back, which is going to be tough when you're matching up against a team that has Nathan MacKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog, Mikko Rantanen, Cale Makar, who's one of the most dynamic young offensive defensemen in the league right now. And again, the only real weakness is Colorado's goaltending, but I think that their two goalies that they have right now, one of them will be able to establish themselves as a solid starter to go deep in the playoffs. I would assume that would be Philip Grubauer, because that's what he was able to do last year as well. So my Stanley Cup final, the official Pump Cake Sports Stanley Cup final, is the Toronto Maple Leafs against the Colorado Avalanche. Wouldn't that be something, eh?
Dun, dun,
to see the Toronto Maple Leafs battle it out for the Stanley Cup. Wow, that would be something else, eh?
Fire. They would be great.
Yeah.
I would love.
It would be unbelievable. It would be like the Raptors run on steroids.
Oh yeah.
Like think about the street crowds and the Jurassic Park stuff that you'd see from that. That would be awesome. But big but. The official Pump Take Sports Stanley Cup prediction is the Colorado Avalanche. I don't see the Toronto Maple Leafs being able to put it all together at the end. Colorado has a much better, deeper defensive core than the Toronto Maple Leafs do, and I think that's what really puts them over the top. Nathan MacKinnon is one of the best, if not the best player in the league. I think he's the closest thing you can find to a Connor McDavid that's not on the Edmonton Oilers. And he's not alone on that team as well. He's got guys like I mentioned before, like Gabriel Landeskog and Mikko Rantanen that can really fly with him. So I think Colorado is going to finally be able to put it together and win their long overdue Stanley Cup championship. They haven't won since 2001, I believe, when they had the Joe Sakic and Peter Forsberg era. So good luck to the Colorado Avalanche. It'd be nice to see the Toronto Maple Leafs be able to pull it off. But I don't think that's going to be my official prediction for this year.
Yeah, you think the Joe Sakic era was a long time ago, but think about 1967, eh? Just the city would just be absolutely going crazy for it. But God. Unfortunately, I mean, I'd like to see it, as just a partial viewer, to just see, I know a lot of guys that are Leafs fans and family that are Leafs fans. So I think it'd be good for the city, and it'd get people happy and give us something to be happy about. But, the more talented team will win. And I trust your opinion, Lucas, on the Stanley Cup Finals. So thank you for watching, everyone. The Pump Take Sports playoff predictions for the NHL season, and we will see you next time.